Professor Quilvin's crystalline fingers tapped against the lecture podium, creating a soft chiming sound that brought the classroom to attention. The biology lab at Harmony, 7 Academy buzzed with the usual mix of students, their varied forms representing dozens of worlds across the galactic community. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had skin, others had scales or leaves or surfaces that defied easy classification. Casey Wright sat in the back row, her human frame looking remarkably ordinary compared to her classmates. She had learned during her first week that being unremarkable was actually remarkable here. Most species had some obvious adaptation, some clear evolutionary path written on their bodies. Humans just looked soft and unprepared for anything. The lesson today covered dietary classifications, and Quilvin had just finished explaining the various ways species across the galaxy obtain nutrients. She projected images of filter feeders from Santine, 4 photosynthetic Pelions, and the energy-absorbing Morphians like herself. Now we come to the newer members of our community, Quilvin said, her voice carrying the harmonics that made Morphian's speech so distinctive. Earth and its dominant species, humans. Casey perked up slightly. Her classmates turned to glance at her, curious as always about the species that had only joined the galactic community 3 years ago. A Grexian student named Bront raised one of his 4 arms. His thick gray skin and broad frame made him look imposing, though Casey had learned he was gentle and thoughtful. Professor, I have been studying human behavior patterns. They are clearly herbivorous, yes? Several students nodded in agreement. Casey felt her eyebrows rise but said nothing yet. Quilvin tilted her head, light refracting through her crystalline structure. What makes you say that, Bront? Observe, Bront said, warming to his subject. He stood and gestured toward Casey, who suddenly felt very much on display. Humans have flat teeth for grinding plant matter. Their jaws are weak compared to predator species. They lack natural weapons, no claws or fangs or venom. And most telling, they are compassionate and diplomatic. No predator species negotiates before fighting. It goes against hunting instinct. A Dravian student, her reptilian features sharp and alert, added her own observation. I have noticed this too. Humans show empathy even to species they have just met. They form emotional bonds quickly. This is prey species behavior, bonding for her protection. Casey bit her lip to keep from smiling. This was not the first time her species had been completely misunderstood by aliens, and it probably would not be the last. Their eyes faced forward. A small Wimlin student squeaked from the front row. But that is their only predator trait, and many herbivores have forward vision too. Exactly, Bront continued, and consider their diplomatic core. Humans are famous already for finding peaceful solutions. They talk, they compromise, they seek common ground. These are not predator behaviors. The classroom had become fully engaged now, with students from various species offering their own supporting evidence. Humans were too social to be solitary hunters, too emotional to be cold predators, too creative and artistic to have hunting-focused brains. The consensus built like a wave, each observation reinforcing the last. Professor Quilvin watched the discussion with interest, her crystalline surface flickering with colors that Casey had learned indicated pleasure at student engagement. These are all thoughtful observations. Perhaps we should ask our human student directly. Casey, would you describe your species' dietary classification? All eyes turned to her. Casey stood slowly, aware of how the movement made several herbivorous students tense slightly. Even that small reaction told her they knew something was off about their conclusions, even if they had not figured out what yet. We're omnivores, Casey said simply. We eat both plants and meat. The silence that followed was absolute. Even a normal background hum of the station's life support seemed to fade. Students stared at her with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. Bront laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. That is a good joke, Casey. Very funny. I'm not joking, Casey said, keeping her voice level and calm. Humans are omnivorous. We eat meat. The laughter died in Bront's throat. His gray skin seemed to pale slightly. But that is impossible. You have no hunting adaptations. You're not built like predators. We're absolutely built like predators, Casey replied. We're just not built like any predator you've encountered before. Appellian students' leaves curled inward, a defensive reaction. Two Santine students exchanged glances, their prey instincts suddenly awakening to something they had missed for months of studying alongside Casey. Professor Quilvin's colors shifted to deep blue, indicating intense curiosity. This is unexpected. Class, it appears we have much to learn. Casey, perhaps you could explain? Casey looked around the classroom at faces that had been friendly and open just moments ago. Now, uncertainty clouded their features. Fear flickered in some eyes. She had known this moment would come eventually. Humans were too different, and their differences could not stay hidden forever behind smiles and diplomacy. Humans are predators, she said clearly. We're apex predators from a Class 12 death world. We hunted for millions of years before we ever planted a single crop. And everything about us, from our bodies to our minds, was shaped by the hunt. The classroom erupted. Students talked over each other, voices rising in pitch and volume. Some demanded proof. Others insisted she must be mistaken about her own species. A few of the herbivorous students had gone very quiet, ancient instincts warning them of danger. Quilvin raised her hands, trying to restore order. Please, everyone, calm discussion only. But Casey could see it in their eyes now, the realization creeping in, the small details suddenly making sense. The way she moved with unusual grace, the way her eyes tracked motion automatically, the way she always knew where everyone in a room was positioned. They had invited a predator into their classroom and never noticed until now. Brant's voice cut through the noise, uncertain and almost afraid. If you are predators, then why have you been so kind to us? Casey met his gaze steadily. Because being a predator is what we were. Being kind is what we chose to become. The chaos in the classroom had finally settled into tense silence. Casey remained standing while her classmates watched her with new eyes. Professor Quilvin had dimmed the overhead lights and activated the central holo display, giving Casey control to illustrate her explanation. Let me start with the basics, Casey said, calling up an image of human dental structure. You mentioned our teeth, Brant. Look closer. The three-dimensional model rotated slowly in the air above them. Casey highlighted different sections as she spoke. These front teeth are incisors. They're designed for cutting and biting. These pointed ones are canines, specifically shaped for tearing flesh. And these back teeth, the molars, they're not just for grinding plants. They're built to handle both meat and vegetation. A nervous murmur rippled through the students. The model showed teeth that told a story of violence most of them had never considered. Our jaws aren't weak, Casey continued. They're efficient. We don't need the crushing power of some predators because we developed something better. Tools, fire, cooking. We made our food easier to eat, which allowed our brains to grow larger instead of devoting energy to massive jaw muscles. She pulled up another image, this one showing the human digestive system. Our stomachs produce strong acid, perfect for breaking down animal proteins. Our intestines are shorter than herbivores because meat is easier to digest than plant matter. Everything about our internal biology is designed to process flesh. The Wimland student in the front row had gone very still. Casey could see the small creature's rapid breathing, fear response kicking in despite the rational knowledge that they were safe in a classroom. I do not understand, said a Santine student, her filter-feeding appendages twitching with agitation. If you are predators, where are your claws? Your speed? Your venom? Casey smiled, though she kept the expression gentle. We don't need them. Humans are endurance predators. We're not fast in short bursts, but we can run for hours. Days even. Our ancestors would pick a prey animal and just follow it. The animal would sprint away, tire itself out, rest. Then we'd appear again. It would run, tire, rest, over and over until it collapsed from exhaustion. She brought up footage from Earth's historical database. The classroom watched in horrified fascination as ancient humans tracked animals across vast plains under brutal sun. The prey ran until they could run no more, and the humans simply walked up to them. That is terrifying, Bront whispered. You just never stop. We don't, Casey confirmed. Human endurance is extreme by galactic standards. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, so we don't overheat during long chases. Our legs and feet are perfectly designed for distance running, and our brains can track prey over enormous distances, reading signs and predicting movement patterns. Professor Quilvin's colors had shifted to purple, indicating deep thought. This explains much about human behavior we found puzzling. Your species' legendary stubbornness in negotiations. Your refusal to give up on seemingly impossible problems. This is predator persistence applied to diplomacy. Exactly, Casey said. We take the same mental tools we use for hunting and apply them to everything else. Humans are problem solvers because we had to be. A successful hunt required planning, cooperation, communication, and innovation. She displayed more images from Earth. Her classmates saw early humans crafting spears, creating fire, working together to bring down animals many times their size. The Pelian students' leaves had curled so tightly they formed a protective ball. You mentioned cooperation, the Dravian student said. She was the only predator species in the class besides Casey, and she seemed more interested than afraid. Most predators are solitary. Why do humans hunt in groups? Because we're not very dangerous individually, Casey admitted. A single human without tools is actually pretty vulnerable. We're not the biggest or strongest or fastest. But together, humans in groups are the most dangerous thing on our planet. She brought up Earth's food chain diagram. The class watched as she traced the various predator species, all impressive in their own right. Great white sharks with rows of serrated teeth. Polar bears weighing over half a ton. Lions with powerful jaws and sharp claws. These are Earth's other apex predators, Casey explained. Notice the plural. Most planets have one dominant predator. Earth has dozens. It's a competitive environment. How did humans survive against these creatures? A student asked that Casey's expression grew serious. We didn't just survive. We dominated. Humans hunted most of these predators. We drove some to extinction. We domesticated others. The word domestication caused another stir. Several students did not know the term. Casey explained, and their confusion turned to shock. You took predators and made them into companions. Braun asked, his forearms gesturing in disbelief. Why would you do such a thing? Because we recognized useful traits, Casey said. Wolves were pack hunters like us. We formed alliances with them. Over thousands of generations, they became dogs. Now, they're humanity's best friends. We did the same with cats, with birds of prey, even with reptiles. She showed images of humans living alongside animals that should have been their competitors or threats. Dogs playing with children, kat sleeping on laps, falcons landing on gloved hands. This makes no sense from an evolutionary standpoint, Professor Quilvin said, though her colors indicated fascination rather than doubt. Predators should compete, not cooperate. That's what makes humans different, Casey said quietly. We learned that cooperation was more valuable than competition. We learned that protecting something could be more rewarding than hunting it. We learned to override our instincts. The classroom had gone silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Less afraid, more thoughtful. So when you look at us, the Wimlin student asked in a tiny voice, what do you see? Casey looked at the small creature, then around at all her classmates. I see people, she said simply. My instincts notice that you're small and quick, yes. Part of my brain categorizes movement and assesses everything around me. But my humanity, my consciousness, sees friends and classmates. The predator in me observes. The person in me chooses. Bront slowly relaxed his defensive posture. That is the most honest thing I have heard you say. Professor Quilvin had officially abandoned her planned lesson. The discussion had become too valuable, too revealing of truths that textbooks had not captured about humanity. She settled into her chair, her crystalline form reflecting the light from the hollow display in scattered rainbow patterns. Casey, you mentioned Earth is a Class 12 death world, Quilvin said. Most of us have only read basic descriptions. Would you explain what that means? Casey nodded and brought up a three-dimensional model of Earth rotating slowly in the air. To her, it looked beautiful with its blue oceans and green continents and white clouds. To her classmates, the gasps and murmurs suggested they saw something very different. Earth's gravity is approximately 1.4 times galactic standard, Casey began. Most of you would be crushed under your own weight within hours of landing. The atmospheric pressure would make breathing difficult. The oxygen content would feel toxic because it's so much higher than most species can process. She zoomed in on various regions. The weather systems are violent. Hurricanes with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can tear apart buildings. Blizzards that drop the temperature to lethal levels within minutes. Floods, droughts, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Earth is constantly trying to kill everything on it. The Santine students were trembling now. Their homeworld was a peaceful water planet with calm seas and gentle currents. The idea of violent weather was completely foreign to them. The temperature variations are extreme, Casey continued. In some places, it can swing from freezing to boiling within a single day. Humans live everywhere from Arctic ice where temperatures drop to negative 50 degrees to deserts where sand reaches 70 degrees. How is survival possible? A Pelian student asked, leaves unfurling slightly with morbid curiosity. Adaptation and innovation, Casey said. Humans build shelters, create clothing, control fire for warmth. We modify our environment instead of waiting for evolution to modify us. It's faster. She brought up a new image, this one showing various Earth animals. The class leaned forward, then immediately recoiled at a massive shark with rows of teeth filled the display. This is a great white shark. It can grow to 6 meters long and weighs over 2 tons. It can sense a single drop of blood in an Olympic swimming pool. It has been hunting in Earth's oceans for 400 million years. She cycled through more images. This is a saltwater crocodile. Bite force strong enough to crush bone. This is a polar bear. Can smell prey from 30 kilometers away. This is a Komodo dragon. Its saliva contains over 50 strains of bacteria that cause deadly infections. With each new predator, her classmates grew more horrified. These creatures were nightmare fuel, things from horror stories meant to scare children into obedience. And humans share a planet with all of these. Braun asked, his voice hollow. We do more than share it, Casey said quietly. We're at the top of the food chain above all of them. Humans have hunted great white sharks. We've survived polar bear attacks. We've studied Komodo dragons up close. The Dravian student spoke up, her predator mind understanding what others could not. These creatures have natural weapons. Size, strength, venom, armor. What weapons do humans have? Casey tapped her temple. This, our brains. We can't outrun a shark, but we can build boats. We can't outbite a crocodile, but we can create tools that strike from a distance. We can't survive venom naturally, but we can develop antivenoms. Every threat Earth threw at us, we found a way to counter it. She pulled up historical footage of early human hunting techniques. The class watched as small groups of humans brought down massive animals using nothing but pointed sticks and teamwork. They saw traps being constructed, fire being used to drive prey into ambushes, and communication allowing coordinated attacks. Pack hunting at its finest, the Dravian student said with something like respect in her voice. Your species weaponized intelligence itself. We had to, Casey said. Individually, humans are weak. Even our early ancestors could be killed by so many things on Earth. Infection from a small wound, dehydration, exposure to elements. We survive by thinking faster and working together. Professor Quilvin interrupted with a question that had clearly been bothering her. But this creates a paradox, Casey. If humans are such efficient predators from such a hostile world, why is the galaxy's primary experience with your species centered on diplomacy and compassion? Human negotiators are famous for finding peaceful solutions. Human aid workers risk their lives to help species they barely know. This does not align with predator behavior. Casey smiled, recognizing the question as the heart of everything. That's the part that makes humans unique, Professor. We didn't stay predators. We evolved beyond it. She brought up new images, these ones showing human civilization. Cities gleaming with lights. Farms stretching across fertile plains. Ships sailing peaceful seas. About 12,000 years ago, humans made a choice. Instead of just hunting, we started farming. We domesticated plants and animals. We built permanent settlements. We created laws and governments and societies built on cooperation instead of competition. Why? The Wimlin asked. If hunting was successful, why change? Because hunting is unpredictable, Casey explained. Some days you catch prey, some days you don't. Farming meant stable food supplies. It meant we could support larger populations. It meant children didn't starve when hunts failed. We chose security over the excitement of the hunt. Brant raised an arm hesitantly. This farming, it replaced hunting entirely. Not entirely, Casey admitted. Humans still eat meat. Many still hunt, though now it's regulated and sustainable. But we also developed alternatives. Plant-based proteins, laboratory-grown meat. And many humans choose not to eat meat at all, even though their biology allows it. The classroom went quiet as students processed this information. The idea of choosing a diet different from what biology dictated was strange to most of them. The choice itself is the point, Casey said. Humans recognized that just because we could hunt and kill didn't mean we should. We developed ethics, morality, philosophy about our place in nature. We questioned our own instincts and decided to be something more. Professor Quilvin's colors shifted to brilliant gold, indicating revelation. So humanity's strength is not predator instinct. It is the ability to overcome predator instinct. Casey felt the weight of everyone's attention as she considered how to explain the deeper truth about humanity. The easy part was over, showing the biology and history. Now came the harder part, explaining the philosophy that separated humans from simple predators. Professor Quilvin is right, Casey said. But it's more complicated than just overcoming instinct. We still have those instincts. Every human does. What changed was what we did with them. She brought up a timeline of human civilization, stretching back thousands of years. When humans formed the first permanent settlements, we faced a new problem. In small hunting groups, everyone knew everyone. If someone stole or hurt another person, the whole group knew and could respond. But in cities with thousands of people, we needed new systems. The display showed ancient law codes, written in languages long dead. We created laws, rules that applied to everyone, ways to resolve conflicts without violence. We took the same strategic thinking we used for hunting and applied it to living together peacefully. A student from Grexia Prime spoke up, confusion evident in their voice. But why would predators want peace? Competition drives evolution. The strongest should dominate. That's true in pure survival situations, Casey agreed. But humans discovered something interesting. Cooperation made everyone stronger. A group of humans working together could accomplish things no individual could manage alone. So we built societies that rewarded cooperation over competition. She showed images of human achievements. Massive structures built by thousands of workers. Scientific discoveries made by teams sharing knowledge. Medical advances that saved millions of lives. Humans developed empathy at a scale most species never reach, Casey continued. We have these things called mirror neurons. They make us feel what others feel. When we see someone in pain, we feel pain. When we see someone happy, we feel happy. It's a neurological trait that probably evolved to help small groups function better. The Dravian student looked skeptical. I have heard of this. But empathy should be limited to one's own group. Predators protect their pack, but show no mercy to outsiders. That's where humans differ, Casey said. Our empathy kept expanding. First we cared about our family, then our tribe, then our village, our city, our nation. Eventually, we started caring about all humans everywhere. And then we extended it even further. She pulled up footage from Earth's nature preserves. Umans karafuli ralukating endangerat animals. Scientists studying ecosystems to protect them. conservation workers risking their lives to save species from extinction. We started protecting the very animals we used to hunt, Casey explained. We recognized that we had driven some species to extinction through overhunting. That knowledge bothered us. So we created protected areas where hunting was forbidden. We bred endangered animals in captivity to boost their populations. We passed laws against killing certain species. The herbivorous students were watching with visible surprise. This did not match their understanding of predator behavior at all. But why? The Pelian student asked, leaves unfurling with genuine curiosity. If a species is no longer useful, why protect it? Casey paused, searching for the right words. Because humans realized that everything has value beyond its use to us. We developed this concept of inherent worth. A species deserves to exist simply because it exists, not because it serves human purposes. It's an ethical framework that goes against pure survival instinct. Professor Quilvin was recording everything, her colors shifting through patterns that indicated intense intellectual engagement. This ethical development, when did it occur? It's still occurring, Casey said. Human ethics evolve constantly. Every generation questions the previous generation's assumptions. We argue about what's right, what's fair, what's just. We don't have universal agreement, but we keep trying to improve. She brought up historical examples, carefully choosing ones that showed growth rather than shame. Humans used to keep other humans as slaves. It was accepted practice for thousands of years. Then we decided it was wrong and abolished it. We used to deny rights to women. Then we recognized that was unjust and changed our laws. We used to persecute people for loving the wrong person or believing different religions. We're still working on fixing that completely. Bront leaned forward, his massive frame somehow looking thoughtful. So, humans are capable of recognizing their own mistakes and changing behavior, even when that behavior was successful for generations. Exactly, Casey said. That's the key to understanding humans. We question everything, including ourselves. It makes us chaotic and unpredictable, but it also means we keep improving. A quiet voice from the back asked a question that made everyone turn. It was a student Casey had never heard speak before, a methane breather in an environmental suit. Do you still have the predator inside you? When you look at us, do you see prey? The question hung in the air. Casey appreciated the honesty of it and decided to respond with equal honesty. Yes and no, she said carefully. My brain still processes information like a predator. I notice movement automatically. I can estimate how fast each of you could run. I know where every exit is in this room. These things happen without conscious thought. Several students shifted uncomfortably. Casey continued before fear could take root. But my consciousness, my awareness, my humanity, that's always in control. I see you as people, as classmates, as friends. The predator part of my brain provides information, but the human part makes decisions. And the human part chooses kindness every single time. She looked around the classroom, meeting each student's eyes in turn. Every human makes that choice constantly. We choose to help instead of harm, to protect instead of prey, to build instead of destroy. The instincts are background noise. Our choices are what matter. The Dravian student made a gesture of respect, recognizing a fellow predator who had chosen a different path. Your species weaponized cooperation the same way you weaponized intelligence. You turned predator traits into tools for peace. That's a good way to put it, Casey agreed. Humans are competitive, but we compete to be the most helpful, the most innovative, the best at solving problems. We channel aggression into sports and games. We turn hunting instincts into research and exploration. We take everything that made us successful predators and repurpose it for building civilization. Professor Quilvin's colors had settled into a steady blue-green that indicated deep satisfaction. This explains why the Galactic Council finally accepted humanity's petition to join. You proved that predators and prey species could coexist peacefully on a single planet. The discussion had shifted from fear to fascination, but Casey could sense there were still questions her classmates were afraid to ask. She waited, letting them process everything they had learned. Finally, the small Wimlin in the front row gathered courage. "Are we safe around humans?" the tiny creature asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Not just here, in this classroom, but everywhere. On ships, in stations, on worlds. Are we truly safe?" Casey looked at the Wimlin directly, seeing the genuine fear in their large eyes. This was the question that mattered most, the one that would determine how humanity was viewed in the galaxy for generations to come. "Yes," Casey said firmly. "You are safe. Not because I'm not a predator, but because I choose every day to be more than my biology." She deactivated the holo display and stepped out from behind the podium, making herself more visible and vulnerable. "Let me explain how human minds work. We have this ancient part of our brain called the amygdala. It handles fear, aggression, instinctive responses. It's the part that notices you're small and quick. The predator part." Casey tapped the side of her head. "But we also have this large prefrontal cortex, the newest part of our brain evolutionarily. It handles planning, decision-making, moral reasoning, empathy. This part sees you as a person with thoughts and feelings and rights." "And which part wins?" Braun asked. "The human part always wins in healthy individuals," Casey said. "It's not even a contest. The instinctive part provides information. The conscious part makes choices. Every human grows up learning to control their impulses, to think before acting, to consider consequences." Professor Quilvin added her own perspective. "I have studied human history extensively when your species applied for Galactic community membership. The Council had deep concerns about admitting a predator species. But humanity's own internal diversity proved your capability for peaceful coexistence." Casey nodded gratefully. "Earth has thousands of different cultures, religions, governments, ideologies. We spent most of our history fighting each other. Wars, conflicts, violence. It was terrible." She paused, letting that sink in. Several students looked worried again. "But then we changed," Casey continued. "We created the United Earth government not through conquest, but through negotiation. Every nation voluntarily gave up some sovereignty to create a system that benefits everyone. We took species that had been enemies for centuries and made them partners." "How?" the methane breather asked. "How does a planet full of predators stop fighting?" "We got tired of it," Casey said simply. "We looked at the cost of war, the lives lost, the resources wasted, the suffering caused, and we collectively decided it wasn't worth it. We decided cooperation was more valuable than conflict." She brought the holo display back online, showing Earth's current political structure. "It took generations, and it's not perfect. We still have disagreements. We still have conflicts. But we resolve them through dialogue, law, and mutual understanding. We built institutions specifically to prevent violence." The Dravian student spoke thoughtfully. "So human society is specifically designed to channel predator instincts away from violence." "Exactly," Casey confirmed. "We have sports where people can compete safely. We have businesses where people can challenge each other economically. We have debates and elections where people fight with words instead of weapons. We took every aggressive instinct and found nonviolent outlets." A Grexian student raised an arm. "But what happens when a human cannot control their instincts? When the predator part wins?" Casey's expression became serious. "Then we have systems to deal with that. Laws against violence. Police to enforce those laws. Courts to judge fairly. Prisons to separate dangerous individuals from society. And mental health systems to help people who struggle with impulse control." "You imprison your own people?" a student asked, sounding shocked. "We protect everyone, including from ourselves," Casey explained. "A human who harms others faces consequences. It's how we maintain safe societies. The threat of punishment helps reinforce the choice to be peaceful." Professor Quilvin interjected with a question. "But Casey, you mentioned earlier that humans have empathy at neurological levels. Does this not make violence difficult anyway?" "It should," Casey said. "And for most humans, it does. Hurting someone else causes us pain through empathy. It's why most human soldiers struggle with trauma after wars." Killing goes against our empathetic nature, even when we're told it's necessary. She looked around the classroom. That's another thing that makes humans unique as predators. We feel guilty about violence. We have regret. We experience emotional pain when we cause physical pain to others. It's a built-in deterrent against our own predator instincts. Brant's posture had relaxed completely now. So you are predators who punish yourselves for acting like predators. That is almost contradictory. It is contradictory, Casey agreed with a slight smile. Humans are walking contradictions. We have instinct telling us to compete and consciousness telling us to cooperate. We have aggression and empathy existing side by side. We're social creatures who sometimes need solitude. We're logical beings who make emotional decisions. How do you live with such internal conflict? Depelian asked. We embrace it, Casey said. The tension between our instincts and our values is what drives human progress. We're constantly trying to be better than we are. It's uncomfortable, but it pushes us to grow. The classroom had grown thoughtful. Students were processing this new understanding of humanity, reconciling the predator biology with the peaceful behavior they had witnessed at a student who had been silent until now finally spoke. You said healthy individuals can control their instincts. What about unhealthy ones? Casey appreciated the direct question. Mental illness exists in all species. Humans can struggle with impulse control, with empathy, with rational decision-making. But we've developed medicine and therapy to help. We don't abandon people who struggle. We try to heal them. And if they cannot be healed, then we keep them separated from others for everyone's safety, Casey said honestly. It's not common, but it happens. The difference is we recognize it as a failure of health, not a moral judgment. We try to help while protecting potential victims. Professor Quilvin's colors had shifted to warm orange, indicating satisfaction with the discussion. I believe we have learned something profound today. Humanity's danger does not come from predator instincts. It comes from their choice to suppress those instincts. A species that can override biology with philosophy is truly remarkable. Casey smiled. We're not special because we're predators. We're special because we're predators who chose to be something else. The class period was nearly over, but nobody moved toward the door. The conversation had transformed from a simple biology lesson into something deeper, something that challenged every student's understanding of what it meant to be sentient. Professor Quilvin checked the time display and made a decision. I'm canceling my next class. This discussion is too important to cut short. Her crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated this was not a casual choice. Casey, I have one more question. What do humans consider their greatest strength? Casey thought carefully before answering. Adaptability. We can eat plants or meat. We can live in frozen tundra or scorching deserts. We can breathe at sea level or in thin mountain air. We can be warriors when we need to protect or peacemakers when we need to build. Humans don't have one single nature. We have options. She gestured around the room. That's why we can be here among so many different species. We adapt to your cultures, your customs, your ways of thinking. We don't require everyone to become like us. We become like you all staying ourselves. The Dravian student made a thoughtful gesture with her clawed hand. This adaptability, it extends to relationships as well. I have noticed humans form bonds with species extremely different from themselves. We do, Casey confirmed. On Earth, we bonded with wolves and made dogs. We befriended cats even though they're solitary hunters. We trained birds, kept reptiles as companions, even formed relationships with dolphins and elephants. If we can connect with non-sentient species, connecting with sentient aliens is natural for us. Brant raised an arm tentatively. May I ask something personal? Casey? Of course. When you first arrived at this academy, were you afraid? Surrounded by species you had never met, some of whom might see you as food or threat. Casey laughed softly. Terrified. I spent the first week convinced I would accidentally offend someone or break some cultural rule I didn't know about. But then I realized something. Everyone else was nervous too. We were all trying to figure each other out. She looked at Brant directly. You were one of the first people to talk to me. You asked about Earth's music. You were genuinely curious, not judgmental. to help me relax. Brant's gray skin darkened slightly, the Grexian equivalent of blushing. I did not realize I had such impact. Small kindnesses matter, Casey said. They build bridges between different worlds. That's something humans learned after centuries of conflict. Being kind costs nothing, but means everything. The women in the front row had gradually moved closer during the discussion, fear replaced by curiosity. Casey, you mentioned that many humans choose not to eat meat, even though they can. Why would someone choose against their biology? Lots of reasons, Casey explained. Some do it for health, some for environmental concerns, since raising animals for food uses more resources than growing plants. Some do it because they believe animals deserve not to suffer. The ability to choose our diet based on ethics rather than necessity is something humans value. That seems inefficient, a practical-minded student observed. Maybe, Casey agreed. But efficiency isn't always the most important thing. Sometimes the choice itself matters more than the outcome. When a human chooses not to eat meat, they're exercising control over their instincts. They're proving to themselves that they're more than biology. Professor Quilvin's colors shifted to deep purple, her contemplative pattern. I'm beginning to understand why the Galactic Council debated humanity's admission for 3 years. You represent a philosophical challenge to how we categorize species. You are predators who act like prey. You are from a death world but seek peace. You have weapons but prefer words. We contain multitudes, Casey said, borrowing a phrase from an ancient Earth poet. Humans are contradictory because we're conscious of our contradictions. We know we're predators, so we work harder to be gentle. We know we're capable of violence, so we build systems for peace. Awareness of our dark side makes us protect our light side. The methane breather spoke again, voice resonating through their suit speakers. On my world, we have a saying, the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. Perhaps this applies to humanity. You have great capacity for both harm and help. That's accurate, Casey said. Humans have done terrible things throughout history. Wars, genocides, environmental destruction. We're not pretending to be perfect, but we learn from mistakes. We try to do better. That's what matters. A student Casey didn't know well raised a question. What happens when humanity encounters a species that sees you as prey, that might try to hunt humans? Casey's smile was complicated. That hasn't happened yet in the galactic community. But human history suggests we would try diplomacy first, show our strength second, and fight only as a last resort. We'd rather make a friend than eliminate a threat. But you could eliminate threats if necessary, the Dravian noted. It wasn't a question. We could, Casey acknowledged. Humans are very good at survival. But we'd rather not prove it that way. We'd rather be known for building than destroying. Professor Quilvin stood, indicating the discussion was reaching its natural conclusion. I want to thank Casey for her honesty today. And I want to thank all of you for listening with open minds. We have learned that predator and prey are categories of behavior, not destiny. Every sentient species has instincts they must manage. Humanity simply made that management the foundation of their civilization. Students began gathering their materials, but the atmosphere had changed. Several approached Casey, not with fear, but with curiosity and respect. The Wimlin actually came close enough to touch Casey's hand briefly, a gesture of trust that meant everything. Brant waited until others had left before speaking. I'm sorry for my assumption at the beginning of class. I judged your species without understanding. Don't apologize, Casey said warmly. You were working with incomplete information. The important thing is you listened when you got new information. That's all anyone can ask. As Casey walked through the station corridors toward the cafeteria, she reflected on the conversation. Other students passed by, representing dozens of species and worlds. Some nodded greetings. Some kept their distance. But none looked at her with the complete misunderstanding they had before that in the cafeteria. Casey selected a salad with synthetic protein. She could have chosen real meat. The station's food synthesizers could create anything. But today, after explaining her species' predator nature, she preferred something that reminded everyone that humans had choices. She sat with a mixed group that had formed over the semester. Herbivores, carnivores, filter feeders, and everything in between. Someone made a joke about the food chain. Everyone laughed, including Casey. The tension from earlier had transformed into understanding. The Pelian students' leaves were fully open now, relaxed and trusting. The Wimlins sat nearby without fear. Bront was engaged in animated discussion about music theory. The Dravian was comparing hunting strategies with Casey in a way that was academic rather than threatening. Casey realized this was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not technology or military might or resources. They brought the proof that different species could coexist peacefully. They brought the example of predators who chose cooperation over competition. They brought hope that biology was not destiny. As conversation flowed around her, Casey thought about Earth and its violent history. All the struggles, all the conflicts, all the painful lessons learned. They had led to this moment, where a human could sit among aliens and be seen not as a threat, but as a friend. Humans were predators. That would never change. But they were predators who built bridges instead of barriers. Protectors instead of hunters. Partners instead of competitors. And that choice, made new every day by every human, was what made them valuable to the galactic community. The galaxy had seen predators before, but they had never seen predators who chose to be guardians. That was humanity's gift to the stars.